Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, yes, I am serious, Runick is good. I promise I will make this point ever so clear, and I will actually prove, well, maybe not prove, but at least give my thoughts on why I actually like Runick as an archetype. So let's get the first big thing out of the way. Go and dislike the video right now, because I know that you're going to dislike it anyway and not actually listen to anything that I have to say, but if you do want to stick around, I'm going to tell you why I actually do like this deck. And no, it's not Floodgates. Obviously, no one likes Floodgates, or at the very least, most people don't like Floodgates. And yes, they do cause massive issues when it comes to Runick. But let's actually talk about Runick, right? Because when it comes to the individual cards, I think a lot of people do give them a lot of negative connotations due to how they are specifically played in Master Duel, as well as in a lot of other, I should say in the TCG and OCG, right? Floodgates are everywhere in Runick lists because they just happen to pair really well with Floodgates, right? Having a whole bunch of monsters that can only have basically one on the field at a time, with most of your deck being centered around controlling the duel through banishing and milling the opponent out of cards, is a great strategy to include Floodgates with, right? Things like Teekboo, Summon Limit, Skill Drain, etc. to basically say, no, you don't get to play the game. We're going to sit here and I am going to get my game plan online. Now, that is never fun, right? Things like Amano Awato that has popped up, things like the myriad of continuous traps that floodgate you, preventing even attacking with things like Messenger of Peace and the like. Yes, that is inherently a annoying, unfun game plan. There's a reason things like Mystic Mine are now banned, and it's because that basically did everything that I just said in a single card, right? Just preventing gameplay. Now, Runick, on the other hand, doesn't do that. There is not a single card in the Runick lineup that says, no, you don't get to play the game. You can't do that thing, right? Not like Rivalry, or Gozen, or Teekboo, or anything like that. All of these cards just interact in standard ways, right? This is just Yugioh. Yugioh does the same thing, except it also furthers their own game plan by banishing cards from the top of your deck. Now that is something that I think a lot of people do not like about Runick, and that's fine. You can say that I don't like this about Runick, but does that necessarily make it a bad deck? Arguable, right? To me, it doesn't, right? I like control strategies. One of my favorite decks of all time is Shaddoll, very much so a control strategy that centers around, things like Winda, things like Schism, etc., right? Slowing down the game so that their game plan ends up working. And now, if you run them out of resources, it tends to be way worse for a control strategy than something like a combo strategy, right? If you beat Sword Soul and they have only one card left, whatever they end up top decking, they could just top deck Taya and win the game anyway, right? You can't really do that against Runick. And that's where I think that Runick is actually pretty fair and uniquely balanced. Now, to be fair, again, the Floodgates are bad, and without the Floodgates, I think Runick's good. With the Floodgates, not so much. I've seen a lot of people tinkering with other various builds that don't specifically play the Floodgates, and while they're not as good, they are more interesting, and they're a lot more fun, right? The Spite Runick build is still good and still entertaining because it's not specifically setting up Floodgates, but it's actually utilizing the unique interactions that the Runick cards give them, such as the level 2 Hugin and Freezing Curses and stuff like that, in order to add additional disruption to your Runick, or to your Spite field in particular, to allow you to kind of actually have outs to a lot of problems that Spite had in particular, and just adding additional power to both of the strategies. It also gives them the ability to win through various different means, right? Through the deck out, or with Spite, you're able to actually go to battle if you manage your battle phases correctly. Now, one thing that I will say about Runick is that, yes, Fountain is incredibly crazy. It's just a stupid card that just happens to work. But the thing is, most modern control decks have to have something like this. Again, going back to Shaddoll, Schism is a card that exists and is very similar in nature to Fountain. It generates insane advantage, and that's because in order to actually have a modern control game work, or at least a modern control strategy work, you have to have something that you can center your strategy around that can compete with a combo strategy, right? Baron de Fleur alone is a massive problem for a lot of decks, and being able to end on that, as well as a myriad of other things, means that control strategies could potentially have significant advantage over a lot of control strategies. The combo strategies have advantage over the control strategies, right? So, when making a deck, you need to consider a win condition. Runick Fountain is that win condition, right? You utilize the constant advantage that you get from these spells. They're pretty minor effects, all things considered. Yes, you do get to banish, but they are all hard once per turns, and you can only utilize them once. You can only use one of their effects, right? Meaning, you can't go Freezing Curses, negate, and then also use another Freezing Curses to then special summon a monster, right? Which is pretty fair in all things considered, right? You're not going to go Forbidden Droplets, draw out your entire opponent's hand, and then go Smiting Storm when they actually do something, and just entirely deck them out. That's not something that you can do, right? Now, a lot of people, specifically in the Yu-Gi-Oh community, really, really never go to bat for control strategies. They always are trying to play the combo strategies. They're always talking about, I want to do my combos, yada yada, I want to do this, that, or the other thing. And they're always talking about the big blowout, high fantasy or high flying control or combo decks and stuff like that, because that's what gets on the YouTube and that's what gets views and that's what people talk about, yada yada. But the thing is, a lot of people still like this game plan, right? Again, I am one of those players. I still play a ton of combo, but I also still like this idea and this strategy. In fact, one of my more recent decks that I've had a lot of fun with is Labyrinth, another control strategy. And the reason for this is because it actually just provides a different way to play the game. Cool, great, fantastic, that's awesome. We haven't had a good strategy that centers around milling cards until Runick. Now again, floodgates, yada yada, I know. But milling the cards is actually a very interesting idea, right? Now, specifically banishing is really nice, because most of the time, if you actually milled cards, the people would just have the graveyard effects of a myriad of different cards, which would actually cause a lot of issues, right? Imagine milling, you know, a tier name. Not exactly going to go well for you now, is it? But banishing them provides not only advantage for you because you're getting rid of potential combo pieces or what have you, but it's also just the better way to do it, because now you're still dealing with the cards, but they're still accessible in some fashion. For example, Tri-Brigade has Tri-Brigade Revolt, which can add cards from the banish pile back to the field, which then go to the graveyard. Hey, there's a way to deal with it. A lot of the tier names have the ability to add cards back from the banish zone, once again, to their hand, to the graveyard, etc. Lots of different cards have ways to interact with those face-up cards anyway, especially in modern metagame, where the graveyard is basically a second hand. Yeah, being able to get from the banish pile isn't too difficult. Now, it is annoying, I will say that. But another thing to note is that Runick isn't actually all that strong. Now, I know a lot of people will say, what are you talking about? It's one of the best decks. And to that I say, of course it is. But the metagame overall is inherently not that strong. Ever since Halqifibrax was banned, and a lot of those other degenerate strategies have been nerfed, and with Max C running around, you can't really do nearly as much in terms of just like overpowered plays. You're either going to be inconsistent, or you're going to be just low power and consistent. Think Branded, right? Branded is probably the best deck, along with Sword Soul. Arguable which one is at the top, but they kind of don't really do much. They're not incredible end boards, like look at a Sword Soul end board, it's not insane, especially compared to something like Adamantipator, but it's consistent, right? And Runick, you know, is consistent, at the very least, right? Consistently seeing their cards, you know, you have multiple access to Fountain with Hugin, and all in all, it's pretty strong. But one or two well-placed interactions, like for example, Infit Bond Hugin, preventing you from getting to Fountain, kind of just kills the deck. And heaven forbid they have an Ash Blossom, and you don't have Called By as the Runick player. You just kind of die. being able to actually get that constant advantage off of Fountain is the main component to this deck. If you deal with Fountain, you deal with the entire board. Most of the time. But that's where, again, Floodgates. But besides that. Okay? Now this actually is one of the cool things that Runick does really well, and it's how they protect Fountain. Now, there is 2 cards in particular that protect Fountain in various different ways. We have Yugioh, which protects it from destruction by banishing itself for cost, just like as a replacement effect, to protect any of your cards. Cool. Now that deals with things like Lightning Storm or Harpy's Feather Duster, which are big blowout cards. Great way to deal with that. If you're going first, fantastic. You get to set up the Yugioh, you get to sit on that. If your opponent goes for something like Lightning Storm, you can quickly tag out or banish it, and then boom, you're done. Yugioh has protected your most important piece. Great. Now, what if you have something like a Cosmic Cyclone? Well, we have Munin. Munin protects from targeting. If your opponent were to go and target it with a Cosmic Cyclone, you can banish the Munin. And now your monster is protected. Right? Now, while Munin doesn't actually get as much value because it has a continuous spell from your deck to your hand, which isn't as good, that's not a continuous spell, it's still good. It gains life points, it allows you to protect the Fountain, it's bigger, but it's still not great, right? And this is where, again, I think in best of 3s, Runick is a little bit more balanced, right? Even with Floodgates. Skill Drain in a best of 3 format just doesn't work. I don't know why, particularly. Okay, I do know why, but it just doesn't, right? But Runick seems to be a deck that just works so well in best of 3s. It's not overly oppressive or annoying. While it can be obnoxious, again, due to Floodgates, it's not insane, right? And that's because in a best of 3, you can either decide to make Yugioh or Munin, depending on whether you are going first or second. Munin is very good against a set Cosmic Cyclone, but it's not very good against Harpy's Feather Duster, right? Whereas Yugioh, great against Harpy's Feather Duster, but if a Cosmic Cyclone comes along, yeah, you're just kind of out of luck, right? And this is where a lot of that counterplay comes from, right? Going first, set up a Yugioh. Going second, set up a Munin. If they go for the Cosmic Cyclone, you can protect with this. If they have the Lightning Storm, you can go for this. Great. Overall, I think that there is a lot to like about this strategy. And while, yes, I get that it can be annoying to play against, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is bad or that it should be talked down upon so much. Now, when it comes to Runick players, on the other hand, yeah, you can talk about them as much as you want. They are just absolutely dog water at their own deck. It's hilarious how bad they are, and it's honestly fun to just get free wins off of them. Similar to Sword Soul players. Dear Lanta, I do not know what they put in the water in Master Duel, but please stop. I want to play against good players. Anyway, that's going to be it for this episode. I just wanted to come on here and give my thoughts on Runick. I like the deck. I think it's cool. Yes, Floodgates are annoying, but Runick is cool. I'm sorry. I just like control strategies, and if you don't, that's okay. You can dislike the video. You can disagree with me. You can tell me off in the comments and be like, no, you're just wrong. You're incorrect. Runick is stupid. I hate you for saying that. Do it. Just please. Please tell me. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Anyway, that's going to be it. Hopefully you guys did indeed enjoy it. If you did, I like it very much appreciate it. If you didn't, dislike it. And remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye. Shout out to the Frost Guard, my members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you enjoy the content.